Armando, genuine pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'm a huge fan of the film, obviously made by a master in Stanley Kubrick with a comedic genius in Peter Sellers. The obvious question, I'm sure you've been asked a million times today, why do it and what do you think you can add to it?
Likewise, I was a huge fan of the film and in fact all Kubrick's films are amazing. I was approached. The Kubrick family and the Kubrick estate had been very protective of the films. They have never done an adaptation of any of them until now. They were gently persuaded by the producers of the show, David Love and Patrick Miles. They approached Sean Foley, first of all, to direct. He's, for the last 30 years, he's been putting on amazing comedies on stage and satires. And he asked me, and I instantly said yes because of my love of the film. And I also could see how it would work. I could see how, you know, the film is set in just three very specific locations: the war room in the Pentagon, an army base, and a B-52 bomber. So those are our three. We do get a B-52 bomber on set. And the theme is about kind of where we are now. We're staring at the possibility of not saving the planet, but also of conflict escalating out of control once again because insane people are in charge. So it felt like the right thing to do for all sorts of reasons.
Something you said there that was, I imagine, somewhat easy in the adaptation is there's three locations.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd say is not so easy is Peter Sellers plays three roles who interact with each other at the same time.
Yes.
A bit more difficult to do in real life. And
Yes.
not only did Steve Coogan take that on, he's taken the fourth role as well that
Yes.
Peter Sellers didn't.
Yes.
Did that change your writing or the adaptation of that with that in mind? Were you changing scenes to accommodate for the fact that he might be in the scene twice or we might need a quick change between?
Yes, I mean, certainly, but we knew that going into the writing, that that was our big thing that we had to address first, the logistics of how. And also it makes it special for the audience because there are no tricks involved. There's no holograms and mirrors and stuff. It is Steve 1 minute over there being that person. And then, 30 seconds later, he's somehow walked on over there as someone different. So that kind of determined the order in which scenes would come. It felt, I mean, the film actually opens with Kong in the B-52 bomber. We don't actually get Kong until the second half now because that felt like a new ingredient that we could introduce then. Dr. Strangelove doesn't actually appear towards the end of the film, but in fact we get Dr. Strangelove fairly early on in the thing. It's all to do with, taking what's there. We have to expand it because it requires more dialogue. We put in extra new scenes, new characters, new ideas, but fundamentally taking what's special about the original and then expanding on it. But then it's the practicalities of what we want to do with the show that then start determining the script. You can't be too precious. You have to, if you're adapting, you're not just doing a point-by-point translation. You're just taking the spirit of it and then coming up with something new that hopefully still carries the spirit of the original.
Were you tempted to, there's a couple of things, like obviously the pie fight infamously is how the film was supposed to end. Was there any temptation on your behalf or add this?
It's amazing. It's such a carefully shot movie where the tone is kept just under that level of comedy. Everything is played seriously. And then, yes, it's not shown in the final cut of the film, but it ended with a massive pie fight in the war room. And I have seen the rushes of it. I have seen the scene cut. And you could see, I mean, it's hilarious. But it's a different movie. You can see why Kubrick said, no, let's cut that out. But what we were lucky enough to do was get access to Kubrick's notes and all his previous drafts. There was an original draft that was actually a straight drama, very intense drama. But Kubrick felt the more he explored the mechanics of what was going on, this idea of mutually assured destruction, MAD, officially known as MAD. What's going to save the world is called MAD. You already know you're in a crazy place. And he said the only way we can convey this absurdity is through comedy. I can't do a dramatic rendition of this because it's too mad. But we were able to, and there are little germs of ideas in his notes that actually, there's one little note where he just writes, what if the Americans had to let Russia bomb one American city in return? And that was it. We thought, well, there's a scene where they debate
Yeah.
which city to give to the Russians,
One springs to mind there, but I won't say.
Everyone has that favorite.
There was also Son of Strangelove that Terry Gilliam was supposed to be doing. Did you get access to any of that material, or was that something that you might
no,
have
I didn't know that, no.
Apparently Kubrick was involved in it. He'd done it. He'd set it up for Gilliam, who wanted him to
One
direct
thing I did discover going to the Kubrick archives was that 2001, again, an early draft of 2001, it's actually a sequel to Strangelove. In that the war has happened on Earth, and so the survivors have now set up their space stations around Earth, and that's what a lot of the spaceships are in the beginning of.
There's always something like
weird.
an extra layer, like even the
Yeah.
Room 237 documentary,
Yeah.
where everyone had all these insane theories going on about The Shining.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Everything from the carpet to,
Yeah.
to the jumpers. I read it that you were a huge Spider-Man and Fantastic Four fan as a kid. You've skewered the superhero genre somewhat with my nemesis, Marina Hyde. Would you be tempted to do something like a more earnest adaptation of a superhero film? Is that something that would interest you?
No, not a film. I've written a Spider-Man comic and I've written a Daredevil, because I was huge fans, and I was asked 2 years ago by Marvel Comics to do those, and I had a great time. And working with the artists, and it was great seeing all that. But I managed to get that done. No, unfortunately, having researched for the franchise, researched Marvel movies and DC movies, you just know that they're not a pleasant experience for the director. They're normally given to these young directors who've just won an indie hit and are told you can have $150 million budget and you can do the next Marvel movie. And then 2/3 of the way through, they're quietly removed as the studio then takes over and cuts it the way they want it, and introduces scenes about crystals that bear no relation to the story, but they had to come there because they set up the next movie and all that. So I think some people have the temperament for that kind of thing.
Did you get any feedback from people on that, actually? Because a lot of, like, there's scenes specifically, like somebody said he announced 15 things at Comic-Con, and it's clearly a dig at Kevin Feige.
He just got addicted to announcing stuff. Yes. Yeah, I haven't had feedback direct, but I need to speak to John Brown, the showrunner, because he was more at the. In fact, the panel they did a panel at Comic-Con, and I felt when the film started, I really enjoyed them, and Captain America: Winter Soldier is one of the best ones, but that was fairly early on. There's just too many of it. I haven't caught up. I'm way behind now.
You said there, obviously, you've written comic books, stage shows, TV, film. For me, I think you're one of the all-time great writers, but. Going for something like when you have a blank page in front of you and you're writing, let's say, the thick of it, how does that process change from writing something like David Copperfield or Dr. Strangelove? Do you start with a theme, a character?
The thick of it, there was a writing room for that. So it was always me and a group of about 8 or 9 writers, and I would run the room. So we'd break the stories together, but then I'd send the writers away to write the scripts, and then we'd all swap and do it. So that's one way. Whereas David Copperfield was myself and Simon Blackwell, just between us. Again, taking what's in the novel, breaking it down, and then going, but that wouldn't work as a movie. That's very bitty. How do we tie it together? How does it have a beginning, a middle of it? What's the theme that might be a little bit more hidden in the novel? How do we make that push the story along in the film? And it's really all about identity. It's about David Copperfield not quite knowing where he fits and who he is, and he's passed from member of the family to member of the family. He's happy with his mother. He loses his mother. He's working as a child labourer and poor, and then suddenly he's working in the law, and the rises and falls of fortune and all this obsession with, do I belong here? And then realizing he's a writer. So it's really Charles Dickens' story in Copperfield, and he only becomes himself when he starts writing about all the people around him. So that's the theme of the film. And so it's about untangling that from an 800-page novel and making it workable as a 2-hour story that will engage people as well,
And finally, we have a section on the show called Extravision, which is named after the old video store that we used to have in Ireland. And the idea is, if Armando Iannucci was to walk into a video store one more time, what 3 films would you like to pick off the shelves?
What 3 films? Magnolia is one of my all-time favourites. I would like to see, I think, The General. I'm a huge Buster Keaton fan, so I'd like to just sit and watch that again. and Singing in the Rain is just, you can't go wrong.
You can. You didn't say Dr. Strangelove.
Well, I sort of felt we've done Dr. Strangelove.
Fair. Armando, it's a genuine pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.